You're listening to the InFocus Interview Show, brought to you by Photofocus.com, an online publication filled with education and inspiration for visual storytellers. This episode is made possible by our partners, Lume Cube, the world's most versatile light, and Drobo, a smart storage solution. Now here's your host, Vanelli.
Hello and welcome. I'm Vanelli. Now, my guests are two talented digital marketing gurus that are part of a marketing team that can help you gain more customers. Please welcome Nick Matos and Ben Saint-Denis from Fueled on Bacon. Hello, guys.
Hey there. How you doing?
How's it going?
Oh, doing great. Well, hey, I'm glad I met you guys through BJ Oswalt. He's part of your company and one of the owners of the company now, I take it?
Yeah.
Well, so he invited me, ironically, off of Facebook. I saw that you guys were giving a special talk in my hometown here in Melbourne, Florida, and you were talking about some of the topics we'll be discussing today. And that's the first time I met the team at Fueled on Bacon. And back then I was excited to say, hey, why don't we get you guys on our podcast? And so now here we are now. So let's talk about Ben for a second. Okay, Ben, where are you coming? Where are you broadcasting from? And what's your job title?
I'm at our headquarters in Melbourne, Florida, and my job title is Senior Front-End Developer.
Great. And Nick?
I'm right now in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I am our digital marketing manager.
Great. All right. So now our topic is how to be found online. So let's talk about blogging. Nick, you have some ideas on blogging?
Yes. So actually, one of the most important things that anybody can do with a website in general is make sure that they're having a tremendous amount of content that's being shown.
Yeah, content is king.
It absolutely rules the internet. One of the, I would say almost 9 times out of 10, if you're searching for something, if it's not immediately a company or a brand, you're probably going to get a blog post. That's one of the first results on whatever you're searching. And so having, a consistent stream of content and a blog that's updated weekly, at the very, very, very least, maybe once every 2 weeks, having that content really up and posted is important to make sure that you get the traffic that your website and your brand and your business truly deserves.
Well, that's great. Well, Nick brought out a good point because Nick, you said, make sure it's relevant. So if you're blogging, give us some suggestions on, like, I'm a photographer. So what would be some suggestions you'd give your client?
Yeah, so making sure that your content is fresh and relevant is one of the things that we say first. And there's different ways that you can do this. There's sources like Google Trends, which is an arm of Google that you can use to search different keywords which are related to trends and to see if something is trending more frequently now compared to maybe 12 months ago. In regards to photography, you could look for nuances in that field and see what's trending more or what's trending less. That way, what you can post about that might get more hits or might get less hits. And that's an interesting way of generating your content because, similarly in fashion, things that are old do come back. And the same is true for a lot of strategy in other industries as well. And so a potential blog topic that maybe was working and popular 10 years ago, it might be coming back now. And you might actually get a lot of good hits on it now because it could be seen as like a vintage strategy or something. And, those kind of quirks are something that's related to content, but it's actually really relevant and actually something that people do. And it actually gets a lot of good traffic for a lot of websites. So there's also other ways of doing this. Google gives you a lot of great suggested searches and search, topics and phrases every time you search for something on the bottom of the page. And so looking for, if you were to Google search photography, I'm sure that at the bottom you might be able to get some good topics that you could probably talk about. Those are going to be your ones that are the most relevant. Those are going to be your ones that are being most searched at this immediate point in time because Google is trying to make sure that they're giving you relevant content as well. So that's a kind of a good way of using these free tools that we have on our side to make sure that our content is as fresh as possible.
Also,
Now, Ben, Yeah, Ben, you were talking about some tools, specific tools for this. What would you recommend for
Well,
blogging?
I was actually going to go back a little bit. Also, thinking creatively about the topics you're covering and the niches you want to cover. Like, obviously, photography is a broad subject, but wedding photography, and then drilling down into that even further into something that's more conversational as a topic. 10 mistakes you don't want to make hiring a wedding photographer. Great locations in whatever area that you're operating in for a wedding venue. Like, even just hitting other aspects of the same industry that you provide a service for.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, but in terms of tools, Matos mentioned the Google side of it. So we will actually get into that a little bit here because researching keywords and topics is a huge part of it. And so when you do find a good topic with some search relevancy, some search frequency, you can actually see how many times that search has been done monthly based on region or, nationally or however you'd like to target it. And you can find those topics, and then you can kind of create content around that topic and use those keywords in your post that will bring your post up in the search query for that.
Gotcha.
So
just by putting in keywords doesn't mean it's going to be seen if your article has nothing to do with those keywords.
Right. You have to have it be contextually on the same topic.
Gotcha. So that's blogging. Now, by the way, for blogging, a photographer knows nothing about web development or web design. I know WordPress is a simple, easy way to get online. And again, I personally would prefer to hire a company like yourself to say, look, guys, after listening to everything we're talking about, if you feel this is too much, then hire a company to get you going, to help you out in the beginning. But for blogging, that, I guess, a lot of people misunderstand the concept of it, and they think they have to develop this whole extravagant website just to blog.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and WordPress too. That's a sea of possibilities there. You can get very lost in plugins and builders and all these different add-ons that can be included in that. But just, if you have budgetary constraints, just start the core theme they give you out of the box and don't add any of the whiz-bang plugins, and just start with the simple blog and just start putting content out there. You can revamp your website when budgetary constraints aren't as much of an issue, when you want to work with a company like ours or anybody else. But that content doesn't have to go away. That content can be transferred to your new, better website. The key is to start now. Start collecting content around your business so that, the digital world has a clue that you exist and what you do. And you have more relevancy as you grow your business, as you build your website to be better. I mean, your website is the face of your business online, digitally, and it's the same thing as putting your business in the yellow pages, except for a lot more eyes are going to be on it, and there's a lot more context and a lot more searchability.
This is actually a really interesting thing and a really interesting theme to talk about because, websites are a lot like a good bottle of wine, right? Websites get better with age, at least according to like Google search bots, right? The older your website is, the longer it's been up, and the more that you are adding to it consistently, the more likely these search engines, I'm talking like Google, Bing, Yahoo, all these different things, the more likely they are to trust and see your content as a relevant and important and probably the best option for somebody who's searching for that related thing. And so this idea of like literally getting it started and having your blogs be posted, even though your website might not be exactly where you want it to be right now, just getting it done and working on it over time, that adds to your credibility to these search engines. And so these things all compound together and make it easier for you to be found online.
Oh, that's great. That's great advice. Now, back to the blogging for a moment. Here's my suggestions, especially for photographers. If you're a brand new photographer and you're thinking about blogging every day or every week at least, please don't. You have to speak from a position of authority. If you really don't understand some of the photo shoots that you're doing, don't try to speak at a higher level and say, well, when I photographed this wedding, I used, these were the tools I used. These were the camera settings. This is why I chose to do this. Because if you're not at that level yet, stick to other things. Stick to other things such as, hey, I noticed the bride and groom were feeling uneasy during the wedding. Here are 5 tips how to make a bride and groom feel more relaxed at the wedding and not let their relatives, frustrate them, or something along those lines. Because what I find a lot of times is I'll read an article, not just on photography, but let's say I'm putting a new stereo in my car, and the first thing the person says is, "Look, I'm really not in a position." Or I'm trying to think of the best word they used. Oh, I'm really not good at this, but I figured, hey, I might as well give it a try. Oh, really? So you're not really good at this, but you're going to give it a try. Yeah, next, I'll go to the next one. So speak not from a position of authority, but maybe if you're a new photographer, maybe talk about, hey, I found this really cool spot to photograph a wedding. And like what you guys said, which I like, is content is king. So when somebody types in, I need a wedding photographer in Melbourne, Florida, and you wrote a blog posting about taking a photo in this area in Melbourne, Florida, your name jumps up to the list.
Yeah. I wanted to say too that kind of piggybacks on the thought of writing content that's conversational in tone. Like, who is your target audience? As a photographer, if you're talking about your gear and camera settings and things of that nature, then your target audience is other photographers, not people looking for photographers. But if you're talking about how to make the wedding experience the best experience possible, or, how to do a modeling shoot on a budget, right? Topics that matter to the people who are actually potentially going to hire you. That's the market you're trying to hit, and that's the search that you want to be found for. You don't necessarily want to be found for, a camera lens forum. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That might not be as exciting.
Right. And truly what it comes down to is just being honest, right? Like, regardless of where you're at in your profession, regardless of, where you want to be, even, there's somebody who's at the same level that you are right now. And so if you're honest with what you're doing and the things that are happening in your space, you have to understand that there's still going to be people who are searching for those same things. And so rather than trying to hype yourself up as something that maybe you're not quite there yet, just being honest and writing honest content, you're still going to get searches for that. You're still going to get reads for that. And honestly, you might get reads in the future for that, just for that purpose alone and for that reason alone.
But above all, please don't belittle yourself, and don't say, well, I'm just a 1-year photographer. So
Right.
Don't belittle yourself, but at the same time, still stay humble and not act like you know it all.
Correct.
And by the way, Ben, I could tell you're into marketing. You rattled off 2 nice topics right away. You said, what was it? One was how to shoot on a budget.
Yeah. What are they going to be the most interested in, right?
Yeah. And what was the other one you said? Something about how to make a wedding.
Yeah. How to organize a wedding to be as seamless as possible with photography. And, I can tell you from being at weddings, how to make that time between the actual ceremony and into the rehearsal as short as possible, so your guests aren't sitting around waiting for 3 hours.
Yeah, you could definitely tell you're in the marketing, because you whipped out some of these topics that were like, great hot buttons right away. So that was good. All right, so that's blogging. Now let's move on to social media.
So we all know, how important social media is, and we're all on social media in one form or another. Social media is extremely interesting because, it's similar to like a blog, but in a different context, right? Like our search engines are now being used to optimize for images and for voice and for video and all these things. And so it's important that when you're talking about content, that you're not forgetting about social media and the importance that video and photo play into that, right? Because, on Instagram, we have the ability to tag our location, right? So on some posts, you can say where you are. For example, I can post a photo now and I can say, I'm in New Orleans, Louisiana. And so just by doing that alone, if someone were to then go to the Discover page of Instagram and search for New Orleans, Louisiana, my photo could potentially show up If it's getting a lot of traction, if it's getting a lot of likes or comments, it could show up as something related to that search, right? Because it is kind of like a search browser in a different context, I suppose. And so relaying that content and making sure that you're optimizing that content on social media to the max that you can, it's really important to being found, because, if you have a website, your website should be in your social media bios, right? And so you should think of your social media as like a highway to get people to your website. And
Also,
it's just like a road, like anything else.
I was going to say also cross-pollination. Like, okay, you write a blog post. Now that's the perfect time to go to all of your social platforms and announce and have a link to that blog post and have a short snippet about it, maybe a video intro to it, whatever it is that you can manage. But like, tie all of those things together, bring people back to the source.
Yeah, of course. And the image, even the image that you use on your blog is the image that you can post on Instagram, is the image that you can post on your Snapchat or wherever it is you're going. And by doing this consistently, you allow yourself to have consistent content, which is something that a lot of people have struggle and difficulty with over time. So if you're keeping up with it, then you're always going to be able to share what you already have made.
Well, that's great. See, I'm glad you said the cross-pollination. I call it repurposing. I've written articles on 3-2-1 backup. How to build a bulletproof backup system for photographers, and I use products called Drobo. My publisher, Saint-Denis, you're the only one I can think of that can write 10 articles talking about the exact same thing, but you reword them in such a way to where you're finally driving home the point that 3 copies of your data, 2 stored locally, 1 stored off-site, is the proper way to back up your system. So I like what you said about you write the blog post, well then put it on Facebook, put a picture on Instagram. If it's a YouTube video, make sure again you use Twitter or something to bring that person or those people to that site. So I like that concept of cross pollination.
Yeah, I mean, we've looked at some interesting things. Like even now, we're doing this interview, right? I could take a 15-second audio snippet from this conversation and put it on our Instagram right now with, a solid color and some text on it and have it be a video, right? And that's super engaging for people. They get to hear a piece of this conversation and then we can link them out right to the podcast episode. And that podcast episode obviously links them further in if they want to learn more about either of us, right?
Exactly. Well, that's great. See, on photofocus.com, we call those quick tips. And what we do is we go back to some of our old articles that we've written, and we take one of the tips from that article, and then from there we make a quick tip. And then to learn more about these, if you want to learn more about this information, visit, and then we show the full website. So, but I like what you're saying. Again, just the content is king. Repurpose that content in different areas. Now, are you finding Facebook and Instagram more for people under 30 and Facebook for everybody else over 30? What are your trends?
I wanted to jump in on this real quick too and just say like social media in general, that's not your place for conversion. So like what you're really building is awareness and authority on whatever subject or service you provide.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, and then then you're bringing them back to where you can do those conversions on your website or a phone call or an email, right? That's the ultimate goal. If you're doing sales, if you're doing content, then content consumption is your point of conversion, right?
Yep.
Oh, that's great.
And it's also, another thing just to tag along with that too is like, the average person takes 7 steps. It takes 7 of the 7 repeated views or recognition of your brand or your content or whatever to then be able to trust and like kind of get like an understanding of it is what you're doing and more likely to convert on something if it is sales or whatever the case might be. And so that ties back into this whole idea of consistency. And so if you post once every 2 months, or if you're posting once every month, you're less likely to hit these people on a consistent basis. And it's easier then to forget about your brand. It's easier then to forget about what you do. If you're posting consistently, not only do you increase that likelihood of them converting for you, but you also do build that brand reputation, that brand recognition, and that authority online.
Oh, that's great. So when I mentioned about the Facebook for being people over 30 and Instagram for people being under 30. Do you guys find that trend to be true?
I think that that's probably fair to say. There's probably some wiggle room there, just because I know that there are some, there's people in college that they use Facebook groups and that kind of stuff. There's these type of groups called like free and for sale groups that are really popular in college towns. To get like free furniture if people need it or whatever the case might be. So there's a little bit of this change between that, and it wasn't always like that way either. Like it used to be that the younger people were on Facebook and older people just weren't on anything. And so it's interesting to see this change that we have now, where the majority of, for what it seems, I would say it's fair to say the majority is on Facebook. The majority of older people are on Facebook compared to Instagram.
Yeah, and then Twitter. Then we got Twitter in this conversation too, right? That's just all over the place.
Yeah, I was just about to say, when Instagram first came out, people were basically saying Instagram is Twitter but with photos, and
right.
And then Twitter, of course, is Twitter. So I'm finding, me personally, I have Twitter is my ghost town for whatever reason. Twitter, I'm not really. All my friends are doing phenomenal on Twitter. Me personally, I don't find it. Facebook and Instagram, of course. Now, obviously, Snapchat. And like you were saying earlier, make sure you reach your target audience. Snapchat for photographers, unless you're dealing with, a different clientele. For photographers, I think they should stay away from Snapchat. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Snapchat's not really all that it used to be. I think Snapchat is definitely for a younger audience. It's definitely for people that are in college or in high school, and it kind of stays that way. It might not be such a good place for that. I know that it is a potential place where people do and can convert sales. So if you are, popular and are getting people who are signing up for your social media accounts, and you do have a Snapchat, then you should leverage it. But if you don't already have a good following on there, it might not be something that you'd want to like focus all your attention on.
Gotcha.
I think it's important to experiment too. I mean, there's a TikTok out there now that's got a lot of rising popularity, and there's a lot of opportunity there. I'm not sure how to target, what that opportunity is at this point, but like it's something we're looking into.
Yeah. A friend of mine, she has 30,000 plus followers. And now she's trying to figure out how to convert those. And like you said, I mean, it's great to have all these incredible likes, but I can't take that to the bank and say, here, I want to pay my mortgage today with 40,000 likes of this image.
Right.
So that ties us into the local citations and directories. Let's talk about that topic. Is that where you're going to try to get the ads and try to get the conversion rate?
Yeah, so local citations and directories is kind of it's an interesting thing in the world of search engine optimization. A lot of people, immediately don't know what those are. A citation, we think of citation and we think of a negative thing, right? A local citation or a local directory is anything from your Google business listing to a Yellow Pages listing to a Yelp page that you might have, these kind of things. It's a place where you can get your business information up so that if someone searches for you online, it looks like you have these different authority points, right? So you have to remember that the way that search engines justify showing your content to people who are searching for something is whether or not they have seen through their crawl bots if your content and your website and these kind of things, if they're relevant enough. And think of it as like a point system, right? And so having more citations and more directories, it gives you more points. Now it's interesting because each citation and each directory has its own point value as well, right? Google has one of the highest point values, right? Another potential citation, I don't know, for example, like, photographylocal.com, right? I don't know if that's real or not, but if it is, it might not have as high as a ranking as Google does. So having your listing on that citation might not be as valuable, but having your citation on higher rated listings, that's super key to being found online, for being trusted, and for potentially converting.
Especially locally, right? Like the more of these directories, the more of these things that you're on, well, like for example, let's say I'm searching on Google for a photographer. Well, when I type in photographer on Google, I don't have to put an area in. It knows where I am. So it's going to show me photographers near me. However, how is it determining what photographer near me to put at the highest part of the list besides just proximity or distance to that person? You know, it's also taking into account how many local directories they're on, how well rated they are on those directories, things of that nature.
Oh, wow. That's great advice. Now, are there tools to help you with this?
Yeah, there's a lot of really, really great tools online. One of the ones that we use for our local-based businesses and the clients that we work with is called Bright Local, brightlocal.com. Now, this can be used. We use this on an agency basis where we manage a lot of clients on here, but it doesn't have to be in that way. A business in itself, or a business owner, or an entrepreneur who's looking to get started can get themselves a single account and manage their own reputation and their own business through there. And it offers a lot of great insight. You can manage your social media reputation. And what I mean by that is, how many shares, likes, or comments you get in a day. And you can track that and manage that. You can also manage your reputation online. And what I mean by this is the amount of reviews that you're getting, right? And getting reviews is also something that's extremely important. And you're making sure, if you have a Google business page, Google My Business page, or a Yelp page or a Yellow Pages page, whichever, for your business, encouraging your customers to leave you a review is something that's crucial. I would say one of the most important things, because again, this adds to this legitimacy factor that search engines are looking for. And obviously, if a photographer has 500 reviews compared to somebody else who has maybe 5, you're probably going to go with the person with 500 reviews. And so Bright Local allows you to track this and manage this because, again, of its importance. But one of the most important things too, and the way this relates to citations and directories, is that it allows you to easily and simply purchase local citations and local directories. And so it will give you a list of the highest ranking citations and directories that you can select. And then what you do simply is submit your business information, and it probably asks you for your name, your address, and your phone number. And then it cross-references all the citations that you might already be listed on. It finds all the ones where there might be errors and allows you to correct your errors. Because if you changed your phone number, and there's a disconnect between, what's the right number and what's the wrong number, this decreases your legitimacy and can hurt your ranking. And so Bright Local allows you the opportunity to buy ones that don't have anything, but it also find the ones that you are having errors on and then fixing those. And so it does take time. I would definitely put a caveat on that. Bright Local is a tool for long-term use. And, getting rankings on these citations and getting these citations purchased and bought takes a little bit of time, at least a couple of weeks, up to a month. And so using it is something that definitely don't expect immediate results, but the long-term payout is definitely greater and way more valuable than not having it.
I want to echo something Nick just said real quick too. It is super critical for search engine optimization for Google on all of these different directories, all the places online that you might have your business listed. It is incredibly critical that it is the exact same on every single one. Bright Local will help you identify issues where it's not, but that's just, you don't realize how much that tiny little oversight of my address maybe has circle spelled out in the address line instead of just CIR period. And that's different on these two. If it's not letter by letter perfectly exactly the same, it deeply affects your local search.
Wow. God, this is all great advice. All right. So are there any other tips you want to give on local citations and directories?
I would say just be aware of it and be patient with it, right? These things do take time and it can be frustrating, right? You might be on a citation that you didn't even know how you got on there. You might be on a citation that you might not be able to change, but these kind of things, it's important that, when these things happen, you keep moving. If you're on one citation that there's an error that you can't change, you need to get on more citations to outweigh that one. You need to get on even more to counteract that. Similarly with reviews, right? If you get one bad review, you can't just have one bad review. You need to get more reviews to make it seem like, you're not just a bad business or someone didn't have a bad experience. Definitely be patient and keep in mind that it's a long-term game, but the results are definitely worthwhile.
By the way, speaking of reviews, just so people are aware, you can't pay somebody to write a review. So
Nope.
No, definitely not.
You can't even really ask for a lot of the services. You really can't directly ask somebody for a review. That's why Nick earlier said encouraging your customers to leave reviews, but you definitely can't like just directly out and out ask or incentivize them in any way to do so.
Yeah. So what would be a good way of trying to get somebody to write a review? Like I used to, when I send somebody a photo, I would say, hey, flattery is the greatest form of compliment. So when you post these online, please, if you we'll tag you, we'll tag you in the photo. Please make sure you tag myself, the makeup artist, and the hair designer, or the designer, or the hair and makeup artist, even the location. Now that's acceptable, correct?
Yeah, 1,000%.
Good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even like let's say a restaurant owner, right? Whoever's your point of contact, whether it's your waiting staff or whatever, every interaction that goes well, it doesn't hurt to just be like, hey, I just want to let you know we're on Google online, and if you feel the urge to leave some feedback for other customers, that'd be great.
Good. So that's a way of asking for it without violating the laws.
Well, they're not laws, right? But like, yeah, the corporate, like let's say Yelp's policy on the matter, right? They're very strict about that, and it's for good reason. They want the feedback that's on their website to be valid.
Great. All right, guys. So our next topic is on long tail keywords. But before we do, let's take a moment and thank our partners.
Lume Cube. Lume Cube is proudly known as the world's most versatile light. It's the smallest, lightest, most compact professional lighting solution on the market. Lume Cube represents the future of LED lighting and is a must-have for anyone looking to create better photos and video. Check out the new Lume Cube strobe, offering anti-collision lighting for drones at lumecube.com. Drobo. Drobo is a smart storage solution that protects photos, videos, and more from hard drive failure, giving peace of mind for the working pro or serious amateur who have a lot of external drives cluttering up their desktop. Save 10% at drobostore.com with the coupon code Photofocus.
And we're back with Nick Matos and Ben Saint-Denis from Fueled on Bacon. And we are continuing with the topic on long tail keywords. Ben, what are long tail keywords?
Okay, so essentially, like when I search for something online, some people might just type in, what's the best pencil? But it could be like, what's the best number 2 pencil to write with if I'm trying to journal? That's a long tail sentence of words, right? Whereas I could have just said best pencil. That would be short tail keywording, right? So what we look for with long tail keywording is how many times that search query is typed in on a given search engine. And then we can kind of target those things because they're less known of a thing, right? I mean, let's look at photography, okay? If you want to get listed for photography when somebody types in photography on Google, you're gonna have a hard time, right? That's a single word that pertains to a lot of industries. But if you're looking at wedding photographers in the Vancouver area, well, you might be able to hit that one. And I think, Matos, you can actually speak to this even better than I can.
Yeah. So when speaking about keywords is a really interesting thing because it has a history, right? When people were first starting to talk about SEO, and when companies and agencies first started to realize the power of what SEO could do for anybody who had a website online, the strategy at the time was something called keyword stuffing, and that meant just like obliterating your copy with like super short tail keywords, that someone was looking for, like just immediately right there. Right. So you would find websites that just said like, photography, photography Melbourne, Florida, photographer, that kind of thing. And the copy it didn't really make any sense, but the copy technically was keyworded well for the time. As we've transitioned, Google has made note of these different things of making sure that your copy isn't they call it keyword stuffed, making sure it's not keyword stuffed, making sure that your copy is making sense, that it's not that it is relevant. Back to this topic of relevancy. Now we're seeing that everybody who has an iPhone or an Android phone, there's this super weird space of being able to talk to Siri. Right? You can ask Siri any question, right? Siri immediately will pull up a search result for you online if you ask her a question. But people don't normally talk in short sentences or short outbursts, at least not normally, and not on an everyday basis with people, especially when they're talking to a friend or their friendly robot friend, right? And so this elongated dialogue type of question that people are using Siri for, they're now using that for search engines because it's all connected. And so when you're talking to Siri and you're asking, you're looking for, probably a pasta recipe, you're not just going to say pasta recipe. You're going to say maybe, gluten-free pasta with a turkey meatball sauce or something like that.
Yeah.
To that extent.
What are the best pasta recipes? Yeah. You know what I mean? It's a conversation.
Right. And so making sure that now, again, we're going to go back to content a little bit. Making sure that your content is using these longer tail keywords is crucial, right? Now, you don't want to completely forget about the short tail keywords, right? You want to make sure that you do say things like photographer, photography, and that kind of thing and put them in there. But elongating your keywords out to be more relevant and thinking about the way that you would say something. Think about the way that you would even think about it. Having copy that's related to that is going to help you as well, especially the more in tune we get with voice search.
Yeah, I want to say this too. Search engines are just getting smarter. That's what's happening. There's no shortcut path to great search engine optimization. There maybe used to be, but that's no longer the case. So what search engines know how to look for now with a high success rate is good content. So really providing good content that's topical to the things that you'd like to be searchable for. That's really all it is.
Okay. Well, you know what? Let's use this podcast as an example. So if I were to do a long tail keywords for this episode, what would you recommend?
I would probably use something to the extent of, Vanelli podcast about marketing and getting found online.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Something to that extent might get pulled up.
Learn the inside tricks to grow your business and increase your customers. Meeting with 2 SEO people. I don't know. I'm just, off the top of my head.
But here's the key. You two are gurus and experts, and even you have to sit and think about it for a little bit. So that we'll use tools to do it. There's Google Keyword Planner where you can actually go and find, Matos mentioned that Google Trends earlier. It takes research. You can't just pull it, out of a hat.
Yeah, we have when we meet with our clients, we have it could be days on end that we spend doing research on keywording, right? Because a lot of the times these people are looking to convert on sales, right? They're hiring this service because they're trying to make money. And so when you keep that in mind, you want to make sure that you're doing your due diligence and you want to make sure that you're putting in as much research as possible, because having the wrong keywords is the difference between getting found and not getting found. And so, it really is something that's crucial. And there's a plethora of tools that you can use, and a lot of them are free. And they help you be able to plan for this, track them, see how they change over time, see what's making a comeback and what's kind of fading off. And a lot of them as well, setting up a Google Ads account, right? And if you're running an ad, you can use keywords there. They'll tell you if one is optimized or not optimized. They'll tell you if one is not getting searched or it is getting searched. And so keeping this in mind, you really do have to be in tune with it and really staying up to date with it, because like Ben was saying, these things change and they are getting smarter. The search engines are getting totally more in tune with the things that we are looking for. And so it's important to stay ahead of it and do your due diligence.
So guys, listen to everything we're talking about right now. I jotted down top five tools, so I can see a sequel to this podcast coming up soon. All right, so let's move on to metadata.
Okay, so yeah, so this is a little bit more technical, and it's a little bit more involved, and it is something as well that does take a little bit of strategy, but it's crucial, and it's something that we all experience on a daily basis. We all see metadata and these type of things every single day, every single time we search for something. Now, you know how when you search for something on Google, right, the result will say, the title of the website, and then there might be like a little dash, and it might be a phrase, right? For example, if you're typing in and searching for technical aspects of SEO, right, you could get technical SEO and then a little dash and could say Moz. And, Moz is a company that's, they do really well, and they provide a lot of tools for SEO. And then underneath that, there's usually a small paragraph, right? That small paragraph is called your meta description. And that top part is called your heading tag, right? These things are things that you can write and curate, whether you're in WordPress or whether you're on Wix or whether you're on Squarespace. Each of these different tools for your website allow you an opportunity to edit this and curate this, right? I typed in technical aspects of SEO, and this header says technical SEO, right? That is the perfect definition of a keyword search and me getting a result that says technical SEO. Within the meta description, the word technical comes up twice and SEO comes up twice, right? So no matter what your keywords are, you want to make sure that you're putting them in your meta description, in your heading tags, and making sure that it's all relevant and all connected, right? This is the space to use the shorter tail keywords. This is the space where you want to make sure that the keyword that is like most likely highly to be searched, that's where you want it, because that's where it's going to get the most attention. You want your long tail keywords to be in your content and the bulk of your copy and that kind of thing. And I understand why, this can seem daunting. I totally get why this can seem like a really interesting thing that, a lot of us don't really know how to do unless you're in the marketing field. But I promise you, setting up a WordPress, it gives you access to this. Having a Squarespace, you can do this all from home. And a quick Google search on how to do this will probably get you a great result on how to make sure that you're optimized for this. And it can seem daunting, but it's not that difficult.
Just also to limits, right? So when you do that Google search, the title is actually limited to 60 characters. So you do need to have careful planning to make sure that you have exactly what you want in that title. The description, roughly it's 160 characters, but typically you want to stay under 120 for mobile results. And those are just some like good practice limits aside from the hard enforced ones that Google will actually enforce on that side. And yeah, I mean, WordPress is 34% of websites. Squarespace, Wix, whatever else, all those services, or even if you build your website flat with HTML and CSS, you can put all that in there too. It all comes down to, WordPress, let's go there, for example. There's a plugin called Yoast or another one called All-in-One SEO. They're both excellent. And every page that you're editing or post that you're editing, at the bottom, you'll see fields for title and description. And they'll actually limit it to say you can't go beyond this many characters and do that for you automatically.
That's great. Yeah, it's Yoast. Yeah, I know we use Yoast. And I noticed when you mentioned the header tag, you're talking about the H1, H2 inside WordPress?
No, so this is so when you Google search something, they have it kind of interestingly color coordinated, right? So the top of the search is like this little green bar, and that's like the breadcrumbs. The thing underneath that's called the heading tag, and
Gotcha.
it's usually blue, and it's typically the title of the website and whatever the content is related to.
Okay. So it's either pulling like X amount, like you said, like 120 characters from it, or if you have it in what's the other a sniplet, but what's that called in WordPress? On the very bottom, I can't remember the name of it. But anyways, so you could actually give it, hey, I want to add this ahead of time. So when it pulls up in Google, it actually reads not the 120 characters, the excerpt. It'll read the excerpt of what
Gotcha.
this is all about.
Exactly.
You brought up something interesting, Manelli. H1 tag you mentioned. That's structural layout of your content, and it is actually important to have it make like canonical sense, like an H1 being the actual heading of the page and H2 being the subheadings. And so that when Google reads that page in its full context, it understands what each piece is, whether it's a body copy piece or it's a subheading or a heading. And then also too, we were talking about meta descriptions and meta titles for the search engine results. They have to be related to what's on the page. You can't just, the keyword stuffing thing was where people used to just jam keywords there to try to come up on search results. That does not work. The content on the page in those body paragraphs and in those headings needs to kind of contain the same information that you're trying to convey in your meta description and meta title.
Well, that's great. All right, now, for the listeners, if this seems overwhelming to you, honestly, this is where you hire a company like Fueled on Bacon. Hire them for a year. Let them help you design and develop a game plan. And then if it's not in your budget to keep them yearly, then I know you guys don't like me saying this, but you would wean off of it. Then they did their jobs to move on to someone else. So what are you guys' thoughts about, some people's investing all their time in Wix or even WordPress?
Well, if you're a photographer, you can spend the time to learn this stuff. It's not rocket science. But we also look for the opportunity, to activate our clients. Like, we're not trying to keep them, required to work with us to get ahead in these things. I like to educate people who are open to learning to be able to do these things for themselves. If they want that, if they just want somebody to take care of it, sure, no problem. We're there. But also, if they want to understand what the strategy is that we're trying to implement, they can sit with us in those meetings, whether it's weekly or biweekly or whatever we have as an arrangement, and really pick up on these things to the point where they feel like they can handle it themselves. That's absolutely great. I would love that.
See, because from my perspective, honestly, if a photographer spends the entire weekend designing a website and they're all like, say, hey, look at this. You're a photographer, not a graphic artist or a web designer. So you spent an entire weekend on a project like this when you could have been out shooting and making money doing what you're an expert at. And sometimes I know people like to take pride in, hey, look, I created my own logo. Well, no offense, I'm pretty talented. I still farm that stuff out to other people that are very talented, more so than me on logo designs.
Yeah, I can speak to that just internally. I'm a developer. I don't even try to be the designer, Nick Matos here, he's the one that tells me what the strategy is going to be and tells me what the content's going to be. And I just get the designs from the designer and the content and the strategy from Nick. And I make sure that it looks good on a page, we all have to do our roles. Exactly. If I were to try to do the design role, it's not going to look as good as having our incredible designer do that work or an incredible content planner do his work. Well,
I finished writing an article a few weeks back. It was, are you a photographer, a retoucher, or a graphic artist? And that was the title of the article. And in the article, I said, you could be all three, but you have to be that particular person in that particular moment. So if I'm a photographer and I'm photographing a bride on a playground, for whatever reason, that's the topic came up because I saw something on Facebook that was pretty hideous. A photographer photographed this woman on a playground, this bride on a playground with a jungle gym behind her. Oh God, it was horrible. And he was all excited about showing his Photoshop skills and how he extracted her from the background and put her on a different background. Now that was horrible. His extraction wasn't the greatest, but the point is, I said, dude, if you're a photographer, you would have taken her to a different location and photographed her in a different spot. If for whatever reason you couldn't take her to another location, that was all you had to work with. Okay, your photography role is done. Now as a graphic artist, you have to look at that and think, what can I do to make sure that jungle gym isn't going to be a pain in the neck to extract it, from this image? And then, of course, is she wearing makeup? How's the proper lighting on her for retouching? So I mentioned that, and the feedback we got was excellent. People understood, yes, you're right. Sometimes photographers fall into that rut of, I'll fix it later in post. And I tell them, slap their hand every time they say that. If you're a photographer, get it right the best that you can, and then rely on those other tools. So with the web design, that's my same philosophy. If you're talented enough and understand programming, okay, you may take a weekend and do the project. But if you're not, go with a professional like you guys, and learn what it takes to have a proper website.
Yeah, it's budgetary too. Like, you might not be able to afford to work with a company like ours initially, and that's okay. If I get phone calls like that, and I tell people, look, the best thing you can do is get online. Go start a Squarespace up, get that money in the door, and then let's talk when you're ready to go move forward and really push that forward. Like, is whatever the need of our client comes first over, like, what we're trying to sell as a business. To me, it's like, I like the partnership aspect of it. Like, if somebody calls me, I'm going to tell them what I believe to be the best move for their business. If it's hiring us, I will for sure let them know that is the case. But if they're not ready for that, I will tell them everything I can to help them get to that next level.
Well, hey, that's great. Hey, guys, where can we find more about you?
We are Fueled on Bacon, so you can check us out at fueledonbacon.com. We're always available to chat. Matos?
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely do a quick Google search for Fueled on Bacon, and you'll grab our website. We also have a phone number that you can reach us at our office. It's 321-426-0555. You can also email us at admin@fueledonbacon.com. You can also find us on social media on Instagram at Fueled on Bacon as well. We're also on Facebook. We're pretty much available on any of these different platforms. Also on Twitter at Fueled on Bacon. And we're always open to having discussions and dialogues on different ways that we can help people kind of level up their business, but also their thought process on a lot of these things. Like Ben was saying, it's really important to us that someone's able to understand how to do it on their own, not just about, what we can provide for them over the long term.
Well, this is absolutely great, guys. Hey, thank you so much for taking time out, especially on a Saturday over the weekend, and helping out our listeners with incredible information. I have a feeling I'm going to have you guys back on again, talking about those different tools and different ways to be found online.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Vanelli.
You are listening to the InFocus Interview Show. If you like these interviews, be sure to subscribe to our weekly Photofocus podcast on photofocus.com. Thank you for joining us.